Welcome to Mind, Body, Soul Mastery, the podcast where transformative journeys unfold through authentic conversations. I'm your host, Brenda Staat-Tomlinson, your guide on this exploration of self-discovery, resilience, and holistic well-being. Join us as we dive deep into the interconnected realms of mind, body, and soul, unraveling the wisdom gained from the messy, the challenging, and sometimes the most heartbreaking moments in life. Get ready for deep and meaningful dialogue that inspires and cultivates empowerment. This is Mind, Body, Soul Mastery.
Oh, hello. You may not recognize my voice, and there's a good reason for that. It's because I am the guest host today, and my name is Katie Adams, and today I have the pleasure of interviewing your host, Brenda. So that is why you are hearing me instead of her to start. Brenda is an immersive coach, holistic healer, and soul guide. Brenda helps women to clear the static, essentially taking a pause from the daily grind and helping her tune into her own inner voice, finding the clarity and the answers she is seeking. Mind, body, soul mastery is an integral part of the work Brenda does, and she guides her clients to maximize the power of mind, body, and soul working together. So, Brenda, welcome to your own podcast.
Thank you. It is so fun to be on my own podcast, like first interview ever.
Yay, good. We have a good reason for interviewing you today because the whole theme of a lot of the conversations has been around grief. I know that you've had a lot of wonderful conversations, but you should have the chance to share your own story. So, and I know this from experience, just knowing the journey you've been on and how important I think it is for what you've experienced to be shared with your audience.
Thank you.
There's a lot to be gleaned from her story. So, Brenda, shall we get right into it?
Yes, let's do this.
Good. We're going to start with, could you please share about the person that you lost and how this loss has affected you both at home, at work, and life in general?
Yes. So in the fall of 2022, I lost my 20-year-old son, Ian. He died from cocaine-laced fentanyl or fentanyl-laced cocaine. I never know which way is the right way to say it, but he died from his addiction. And it's so sad that his relapse cost him his life. But I want to back up because my story about grieving the loss of him is very unique. And a lot of that is because it goes back to my healing journey and when I started changing me.
Yeah.
It's not lost on me that Ian was the catalyst for my healing journey.
Yeah.
So he was a teenager 5 years ago and just in a lot of trouble and a rebel. Like it was very uncomfortable in my home.
Can you say a bit more about that? What do you mean by rebel and it being uncomfortable in your
Just getting into trouble, choosing to get in trouble with the law. At the time, I didn't know that he was playing around with drugs. Now I know that, but I didn't at the time.
Yeah.
And just failing classes, being suspended from school, like it was rough years. And troubled teens definitely was the vibe in my household. I remember this one night in October after another argument and the door slam. It was like, I can't live like this anymore. Something has to change. And I can only change me because I knew enough then that I couldn't change him because what I had been doing, how I'd been trying to parent wasn't working.
Yeah.
So I started to work on me and found alternative ways of healing. I'd done talk therapy. It was fabulous for that time, but I knew this time it's not what I needed. So I sought alternative methods and found energy healing and meditation and more of a spiritual journey, a connection with my inner self, a connection with my spirit guides that just continued to heal me and make me into the version of woman that wasn't always so reactive. So Ian, I said before, was my mirror and he could get me like immediately 0 to 60 just like that. Sometimes with just a look, right? If you have teenagers. Sometimes
Mhm.
it's just a look and you are right there hot and ready to react.
Yeah.
That was Ian for me.
Mhm.
And so as I continued to work on myself in this healing,
Mhm.
within months of that moment, he crossed a line and ended up going to live with his dad in Florida.
Mhm.
So he was 16 or 17 and moved to Florida.
Mhm.
So he was been down there for the last 3 or 4 years.
How was that for you when he left?
It was hard giving up custody of one of your kids, like literally saying,
Mhm.
you know what, you can't stay here. He didn't want to stay here either.
Mhm.
It was extremely hard, yet I also knew that it was the best thing for him. And I had the hope that by moving away from the influences that he had made here and the problems he was getting into, the trouble he was getting into, that maybe down there he'd have an opportunity for a fresh start
Yeah.
and making better friends and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
He did end up graduating high school, which by that point I had thought that "God, he's just going to get his GED. He's never going to finish."
Mhm.
So it was quite a surprise to hear him call and say, "Hey, mom, I got my diploma. I graduated." And I'm like, What? That was always the plan. I'm like, oh my God, this smart,
Mhm.
clever kid had ideas and plans, yet never shared them, right? I felt like I was just watching this kid aimless and not motivated.
And so were you like at your end? Is that essentially what it was like?
I was at my end when he left, yes. And
Mhm.
it was after he left that my healing really began because
Yeah.
now he was out of the household.
Mhm.
I wasn't being triggered and it wasn't continuing to happen. So I could really begin to focus on my healing. And I still had one at home,
Mhm.
one in college, and one off married,
Mhm.
but I could actually work on my healing. And it just felt like there was less pressure in the house.
Yeah. Can you say a bit more about earlier you had said you had done talk therapy and then went to into alternative, for lack of a better term, ways of healing. What finally brought you there and what were you introduced to begin with?
Sure. I'm going to back up one step.
Yeah.
That night in October with the door slam and something had to change,
Hmm.
I ended up walking into Celebrate Recovery. So I had a couple of friends that had gone through Celebrate Recovery, and I've watched them for over a year and watched them change their language, their thoughts, and wow, there's just really something different about them.
Hmm.
So I walked into Celebrate Recovery, which is the Christian version of an AA program,
Okay.
a 12-step program.
Okay.
And I really needed those 12 steps to work through some of the stuff. And so I immersed myself into that for 6 months.
Hmm.
That is where I learned to listen
Oh.
because you sit in one of those groups and you just share your shit. You like word vomit it out, and
Mhm.
all that anybody can say is thanks for sharing. From someone who never expressed or shared the stuff that went on inside of me or the
Mhm.
stuff that was going in my home, it
Mhm.
was like weeks before I even started sharing
Mhm.
what was going on in my home, the reasons why I was there.
Mhm.
And as I listened to the other women in my group, it
Mhm.
was like, oh, I'm not alone. There
Mhm.
are others who are going through some tough stuff too. So I learned to listen and I learned how to share. I learned how to get out what I
Mhm.
was feeling in my words.
Yeah.
And then the alternative method that came in my field then
Mhm.
shortly after that was emotion code and
Mhm.
body code, energy healing. It's using muscle testing. I picked up muscle testing really quick.
Mhm.
So I started working on myself, started using emotion code, body code sessions to release the negative energy that my body was holding on to. And let me tell you, I'm 5 years later,
Mhm.
my body is still holding on to a lot of shit.
Can you explain what you mean by your body holding on to the emotions and give a little bit of a description for anybody who might be like, what do you mean?
Yes. 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 So emotions are communication tools and life happens to us all the time. And emotions come up. And when we don't process them and don't allow ourselves to feel them, like they have a 90-second shelf life, is how I'll say it.
Yeah.
They'll pass if we just allow ourselves to process and feel it.
Hmm.
I didn't grow up in a place where I felt safe to feel my emotions. they were shut down. And I was told I was too sensitive.
Mhm.
And so I learned to stuff it.
Welcome to the 90s.
Yes, I learned to stuff it.
Yeah.
And so when we don't process our emotions, our body will hold on to them and it becomes part of our programming, part of our thoughts, beliefs, perceptions. Then they begin to contribute to our actions and reactions and our behaviors and our patterns.
Mhm.
I use with my clients this analogy of that we can only stuff so much into the closet
Mm.
and then it starts to spill out and we can't close the closet anymore.
Yeah.
So when our behaviors, like Ian getting me 0 to 60 just like that, I was at this point where I had stuffed so much
Mhm.
that it didn't take much for the door to open and things to start falling out. So my behavior, my reaction of yelling and getting in a fight with a teenager,
Mhm.
it wasn't working, but
Mhm.
that's the pattern that I had put myself in.
Mhm.
So that's the negative energy that our body holds is
Mhm.
those kinds of stuff that we don't process, acknowledge, and
Mhm.
that kind of stuff.
Okay. So then that is what you almost stumbled into.
Yes, I stumbled into a modality that helped me pinpoint
Mhm.
whatever issue I'm chasing. It helped me pinpoint what negative energy my body was holding. And it literally is just once acknowledged, the body wants to release because
Mhm.
this mind body soul partnership, right? If our mind is our conscious mind, our body is also the subconscious mind.
Mhm.
The subconscious mind runs our programming. It also knows because it's connected with our soul, which is connected to source, God, universe, our higher self. It knows innately, oh, this doesn't serve her. She doesn't need to hold on to this to protect her.
Mhm.
But the subconscious, in its minimal form, it holds on to things to protect because that's what we've trained it to do. Its
Mhm.
job is to protect us.
You were sharing about the way the body holds onto emotions and then what it looks like when we release them. And then I'm actually wondering, what was that like for you the first time you went through that process? Like you stumbled upon this
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
could you talk about that, your first experience with it?
Sure. So I stumbled upon it, started doing it on myself, and realized that I was pretty good at it. I picked it up. It was
Mhm.
easy for me. Muscle testing is easy for me, connecting with my body, getting yes answers, no answers, very easy. And so I just started working on myself. I spent a lot of time working on the end of the marriage and the relationship issues with their dad. I
Mhm.
spent a lot of time with this relationship issues with my kids.
Mm.
At first, I didn't notice anything. I think my first aha moment was at work, and I was having a conversation with a coworker
Mhm.
that I normally couldn't stand.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, I'm like, "Oh my God, I've been here for 5 minutes and he hasn't gotten annoying yet." And that was my first big aha that,
Yeah.
holy cow, this is working.
Mhm.
I'm changing.
Mhm.
But I hadn't been intentionally looking for the change. I hadn't been intentionally notice and observing myself.
Yeah.
And I think once I started doing that, I noticed the shifts sooner, faster.
Oh, beautiful. So with that, aside from the little things then with work, then what started to be bigger and more impactful, specifically then with Ian?
So as I continued my healing and my journey, like I came across human design and I understood my design.
Mhm.
I understood how my blueprint and how I interact with other designs. And I
Mhm.
also then spent time learning my kids' design.
Mhm.
So one of the things with my kids and with Ian too is
Mhm.
I, again, I started listening more
Mm.
and
Mhm.
I started asking questions that were more thought provoking.
Mhm.
And with some of my kids, I had to ask yes or no questions because that's how they're designed.
Mhm.
And I just learned to listen and not make it about me. Because
Yeah.
one of the sad things about being a mom, especially of adult children,
Mhm.
kids, I'm sorry if you're going to hear this. I love you. God, I love you. But kids don't necessarily ask, hey, mom, how are you?
Yeah.
And what's going on in your life, right? And so
Yes.
sometimes when you're a single mom, like you just love that reciprocity.
Mhm.
But I've learned to just listen to my kids. And especially with Ian, I remember talking to him 3 weeks before he died.
Mhm.
Our relationship was rocky. He just left an emergent situation in bad terms,
Yeah.
and it was hard to build a bridge, and you're trying to build a bridge, right, with a kid who's 16 down in Florida.
Mhm.
Doesn't so a lot of healing had to happen,
Yeah.
especially in me, and I'm sure for him too, but we didn't talk about that, so I don't know, but a lot of healing had to happen in me in order for the conversations and to begin building this bridge in this relationship.
Yeah.
So by the time 3 years later, 3 weeks before he died, we had this conversation. It was probably one of the best conversations we ever had.
Yeah.
And he was talking to me about his sobriety and how many days he'd gone. And I was like so proud of him.
Yeah.
And he was talking to me about his job and what he's doing and just light, simple things.
Mhm.
But I remember in listening to his conversation, he would say something as he's smoking a joint on the phone with me. Like I realized that his sobriety is not my interpretation of sobriety.
Yes.
So to him, sobriety meant I'm not doing the hard drugs,
Yeah.
but I was smoking marijuana and I'm doing little things, but I'm not doing X, Y, and Z anymore, mom. I'm like, oh, okay. So I had to hear that
Yeah.
and accept that
Mhm.
and not go off on that's not really like judge,
Yeah.
right? Zip your lips, mom.
Mhm.
Breathe through your my grandma's great advice was breathe through your nose. It keeps your mouth shut. And trust me, I do that a lot.
Yeah.
And so my healing then I was able to have that conversation with him and just listen to all that he had to say. Some of what he was telling me was shocking.
Yeah.
Some of it
Shocking in what way?
I don't want to say,
Okay.
but a little too private,
Mhm.
but some of it was shocking when there's parts of me I wanted to say, dude, I've raised you better, but I didn't. You just had to hold some of that back because I didn't want to push him away any farther. I'm trying to build a bridge.
So is this different? Do you think had you
Oh,
not done the work that you did,
yes.
okay, how do you think you would have responded compared to how you did?
I would have continued to have been judging and on it, like on his ass. What are you doing? If you hate the job, why? I would have been pushing him.
Mhm.
And the one thing I've learned about with in my healing and my journey and what I've learned about all my children is
Mhm.
that pushing them in pressure doesn't work.
Shoot.
It doesn't work.
Mhm.
And that was my MO
Yeah.
for the majority of their life.
Yeah.
It didn't work and it wasn't helpful.
Do you now see that it came from a place of pain, that pushing and whatnot? Did it come from a place of hurt from the stored emotions and then a desire to control?
I think that pushing and that pressure came from a pattern that
Mhm.
I experienced as a child. Like
Ah,
that was
mhm.
more of a generational, it's how life was, this
Mm.
push and pattern. We had these expectations. It was such a different world back then too, growing up. I always knew I was going off to college.
Yeah.
I raised my kids with that expectation they're all going off to college, and I
Mm.
realized in their last few years of school, like, I started to change my story because I
Mhm.
was healing. I was different, and my kids probably shouldn't go to college because
Yeah.
it's not for them,
Yeah.
and then began to change my words and my verbiage and acceptance that, "You know what? It's
Mhm.
okay. You'll find out what you need to do." That
Mhm.
was huge change
Mhm.
because we were raised, you go to college, you get married, you get a house, you get a
Mhm.
mortgage, you do your job. That was normal. That was
Mhm.
standard and expected for life.
Mhm.
I don't believe that's the standard and the expectation
Mm.
for kids today.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Mhm.
such a different world, and I don't want them to have that pressure.
Yeah. So you got to enter into this conversation with him from that place. And then 3 weeks later, he passed.
Yeah.
So can you talk about what that was like for you in the moment and then how it affected you going forward?
Yes. Number 1, it was a shock
Mhm.
because even though I knew my son was an addict and I
Mhm.
knew that he didn't have any plans really of stopping his experimenting with drugs,
Mhm.
I never once ever imagined that
Mhm.
he was going to die from his addiction.
Yeah.
Never once, never even crossed my mind.
Mhm.
So it was shocking.
Mhm.
And then to come to find out it wasn't intentional. So in
Mhm.
conversations with his dad and his stepmom, like he had plans to go away with friends on the weekend and starting a new job. He got new work boots. There was nothing intentional around it.
Mhm.
Also, too, from what I've learned after, the friend who gave him the cocaine also
Mhm.
took it, and he didn't lose his life, just
Oh.
Ian did. And so, yeah, yeah. And again, it's horrendous. It's horrendous. And I won't get on that whole fentanyl thing, but
So,
that was the day.
yeah.
That was the day.
Yeah. So grief came on you, obviously,
Mhm.
immediately. What did you do with it in the moment? Like, how did you sit with it then compared to what it was like then moving forward?
Yeah, I was in shock.
Yeah.
There was a lot of shock. And I don't even think I really cried until the next day when I had to call and tell people.
Yeah.
And that's when my tears started to come out.
Mhm.
However, I'm going to just go here, and this is what makes my grief story unique in that
Mhm.
because of the work that I've done, because of the people that I've interacted with and encountered, because of the way that my thoughts and perceptions have changed about spirituality and life and death,
Mhm.
I was internally simply asking the universe for someone to come in my field that would be able to talk to Ian's energy, his source energy,
Mhm.
and answer my questions. I totally believed that there would be someone
Mhm.
that would come in my field that would be able to talk to him and get me the answers I needed.
Mhm.
And within 4 days of that,
Mhm.
one of the women that I have worked with down in Australia, she's worked with me, she's worked with some of my kids, reached out and said, "Brenda, would you like me to connect with Ian's source energy
Mhm.
and answer any questions that you have and just hear what he has to say?" And I was like, "Hell yes.
Mhm.
I've been asking the universe for you in
Mhm.
my mind, and here you are."
Yeah.
And so I gave her my questions.
Mhm.
She connected with his source energy, asked all my questions, and then she recorded it. And I got
Mhm.
to listen to the recording.
Mhm.
And it totally quantum shifted my grief,
Mhm.
because every question was answered. About one of them was, "Why did you choose this life?" And his answer was, and now remember, he's a soul, right? Who the soul now has full awareness of what the human experience was and what he chose to come and do on this earth, right?
Mhm.
And it was, I always knew I was going to have a short life. And what I didn't know was that to chase the high I was seeking, I didn't know I could do it another way. I chose drugs.
Mhm.
And that led me to think, okay, so now he understands going within,
Mhm.
seeking truth from your higher self, your higher consciousness. He could have sought the high that he was seeking by tuning in and going into spiritual things,
Mhm.
spiritual realms, right?
Yeah.
That was the biggest one for me, is that he came to chase the high,
Mhm.
and that's exactly what he did.
Mhm.
One of the other thing, his humor came through, like,
Yeah.
one of the times was, "Mom, I graduated to high school," and I laughed because I knew what that meant. He didn't think he was gonna graduate high school here, but now in his soul, he
Mhm.
went from middle school to high school.
Yeah.
So his humor came through in everything, and this woman, she didn't know about Ian. There's no way some of the things that the answers were that she could have known or would have known. So I knew right away
Mhm.
that this was true Ian coming through, answering the questions. And something he said at the end was, "Mom, I saw the light and I couldn't stop going toward it. Like, I just had to keep going toward it." So that told me, oh, he had an opportunity to come back to this earth
Okay.
in those last few moments.
Mhm.
And he chose to follow the light, which,
Mhm.
thankful. And then his response was, "And Mom, my whole soul family here was here to greet me. I'm not alone anymore.
Mm.
They're with me and they're here."
Mhm.
And to feel that,
Mhm.
to know that,
Yeah.
was the biggest and best gift ever. And again,
Mhm.
that's why I say that experience quantum shifted my grief,
Mhm.
because I never sat in the, "He was so young.
Mhm.
Why didn't he get to live his life? He's never going to experience children." Like, I never sat in all the what ifs and the things he didn't get to do,
Mhm.
because I heard exactly from him what he came to do. And Ian has shown up in a lot of my own going within and my own listening to my guides. He shows up as this bright white light with a triangle head. I know it sounds so weird, but he shows up a lot. So I know he's always here. I know he's always with me. And sometimes, like when he shows up, I'll hear, "I'm okay, mom," or "I love you, mom," or "I'm here." It's always a message that I need in that moment.
Yeah.
So that's why my perspective on grief is just vastly different than
Yeah.
many of the people that I observe.
So for those that you do observe, this very much feels like a channeled question that I'm being asked to ask you. For those that are listening, that their experience has been different, and maybe they're sitting in the experience of the tension of the relationship that they had, and there hasn't been this release of, or the shift in how they have felt towards their child, and maybe their child, they had a similar
Yeah.
situation, but rather than feeling reconciled despite not having a real they so they're feeling like a failure,
Yeah.
or maybe they're feeling like
Guilt and regret.
guilt, and so that contributes to the grief in a different way. So do you have anything that you think would be helpful for anybody that is just living in that space?
Yeah. Yes. The guilt and the regret, even the feeling, even moms who haven't lost their children, the guilt and the regret and feeling like you're a failure. It's
Mhm.
can apply to any woman who's had children, I believe.
Yeah.
But learning to forgive yourself for the things that you did. So using Ho'oponopono, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you. Using that simple mantra to give yourself the grace and the compassion to let go of the guilt. So, in order for our bodies to let go of the emotions that it's holding on to, the negative stuff, it really just wants acknowledgement that you're holding it. And it can be as easy as this thought comes up and, "Ugh, I was such a bad mom," and this moment comes up in your head. And it's just simple, this hand on the heart. And, yes, that was a moment. And I released this. Thank you, body, for showing me this. And I give you permission to let it go. It can be as simple as that. And we all have the ability to heal ourselves. We just haven't been taught how.
Do you wonder too, or do you think that often as moms, we almost carry that guilt as a badge of honor? Like the depth of my guilt demonstrates the depth of my love. And especially in turn, when it comes to loss, when those things collide, I feel like that can create almost this like black hole
Yes.
of
Yeah.
that pull that can suck you in. And so the grief almost feels insurmountable.
Yeah.
And yet, it's not.
Yeah. As you're talking, sorry, something popped in. So,
Yeah.
one of the things that I see a lot with grief, I see this written, the amount of our tears shows the depth of our love, or whatever. Like the deeper we grieve, the deeper we love. And as for someone who isn't quote unquote grieving, like I observe most people grieve, that has its own little tinge of judgment on it. Right? So this comparison of grief or whatever,
Yeah.
like that just feels so icky to me. And the guilt and the regret and the what ifs that we didn't do as parents and now our children, we can't right that wrong other than releasing it as it comes up. But the other thing that I would say is forgive yourself and give yourself the grace and the compassion and let that go. And that is going to help begin to ease the grief and the suffering that I just observe so many people stuck in.
Yeah.
And that breaks my heart.
Yeah. Do you feel like that is probably the thing that you would want to offer the most based off of what lessons you learned? Or is there another lesson that you learned through this that maybe would have, if you learned it earlier, maybe would have helped you navigate it differently, or they just really facilitated this navigation at the beginning and maybe even continues to?
Yeah. So because this happened all within 4 days, I'll be honest, there's times I wonder, God, did you even really grieve? However, I will say that I know I did because you, my friends, reached out to me every single day for over a year.
Mhm.
Best gift ever.
Mhm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I know I grieved because there are many a times that I was in tears
Mhm.
in our messages.
Yeah.
Just different things that came up and different things that popped up.
Mhm. You know what? Maybe we can share that a bit, just encouraging anybody that hears this that maybe is experiencing grief or that is walking with somebody that is,
Yeah.
that it just check in. Like you don't have to offer anything other than your presence.
Yes.
You don't need a word basket of
Right.
whatever.
Right.
You
Many
just
times you just every day, and this was the most beautiful gift. Every day I'd get a message, "Hey, what are you doing today?" Just checking in. That's all it was.
Mhm.
But it gave me the freedom to respond. And sometimes I responded with what I was doing. Other
Mhm.
times I was like in tears and telling you where I was at.
Yeah.
But no joke, it was every day for a year. Anyone who's lost someone, whether it's a spouse or a child, especially someone close, people are there for you in the moment. They're there for you maybe through the funeral service or whatever, maybe a week or two after.
Mhm.
But after that, everyone goes on with their life and forgets. And the person who's lost someone hasn't forgotten. Like, I think about my kids every damn day.
Mhm.
I think about Ian every day.
Yeah.
It doesn't go away. It doesn't change.
Mhm. So, what would you ask people to do who maybe are like, I don't know what to do, and so then they just do nothing? Because that's what I think happens. We're just uncomfortable. We love somebody, we care about them, but we don't know what to say. We're uncomfortable, so then we end up doing nothing, and then years pass, and
Yeah,
yeah.
it is uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And even the platitudes after, we've had lots of conversations about that. Just
Need a do not say list. Yeah.
like for me, all I could respond with, there are no words and it's unimaginable.
Mhm.
And yeah, do not say list because
Let's
man,
there's a couple of quick ones. It's everything happens for a reason.
yeah, they're in a better place.
Yeah.
Don't ever say those things to someone who's lost. That it
Mhm.
just hurts. It hurts. So it's almost better to say nothing. Those people that just came and gave me a hug and just said no words, you know what? I completely get you. Those were what comforted me the most,
Yeah.
is just that. And so even saying, you know what? I feel like I need to say something, but I don't know what to say.
Mhm.
Even that, just being authentically honest, it
Mhm.
shows you care and it shows that you're trying.
Mhm.
Even me, like, still, I've lost someone. I'm not a pro and an expert on when other people lose someone. Like, I still freeze up. I don't know what to say. I just end up saying, I'm so sorry. I'm
Mhm.
so sorry that
Mhm.
you have to go through this, that this happened. Like,
Mhm.
it's all I can say.
Yeah, and maybe that's the something we can offer is like just something to be able
Yeah.
to say when you don't know what to say, which is I don't know what to
I
say,
don't know what to say.
but I'm
I love
here.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and the other thing I would say
Yeah.
is please do not say to someone, let me know if you need anything. We've talked about
That.
this one a lot because bloody hell, I don't even know what I need. I couldn't even
Mhm.
tell you what I needed because I don't know what I need. I'm just going through the motions. I'm just going through life. And so I ended up saying to people, you know what? I don't even know what I need. But
Mhm.
if when I determine what I need and you're the one that can fill it, I'll reach out to you.
This is I'm gonna hop on a soapbox a hot second. When
Please.
somebody's in the middle of pain or grief and we say, let me know what you need, we're putting the responsibility of care actually back on them and then relieving ourselves because we are uncomfortable. We, again, don't know what to do, don't know what to
Yeah.
say. So panic. Tell me what you need. And like you said, in that
Yeah.
moment, you need care and you don't know often.
Yeah.
So it's just find something and pick it.
Yeah.
Be like, it can just be what you know you can do, what
Yeah.
you're good at.
Yep.
If you're not great at calling, but you're super good at writing a card,
Yep.
send them a card, but maybe do it every couple of weeks.
Right.
Remember to do it again and again. I think a lot of this
Yeah.
is about the continuing to show up.
Just yes, and not being forgotten, because
Yeah.
that's what ends up happening is you just feel everyone's forgets.
Mhm.
And even within my own family, like We don't really talk about Ian. We don't really say his name much. And that hurts. That silence
Mm.
hurts just as much as the actual loss of him, is that we can't just allow him to come into conversation and have a memory
Mhm.
and just allow our emotions to flow through. And that is it adds another layer to grief,
Mhm.
that just continuing to stuff it down.
Yeah, and I think that comes from, again, a place of, I don't know what to say, or I'm uncomfortable, and so when the person's gone, they can still be with you through conversation, and I think it's so key what you just said with saying their name
Yeah.
and always doing it. Like, there is, I've told you about my friend whose, baby died on his first birthday. Like,
Mm.
it was his first birthday, they celebrated, they put him down for bed, and he passed away
Mhm.
within a couple hours from SIDS. And it has been 10 years. It actually is going to be 11 years, I think, this in a couple weeks. And I know this because I will contact her and I will use his name. And
Yeah.
when I see her,
Yeah.
I use his name. And I think that's vital to do when you care, when you want to demonstrate that you care and you're,
It's like the ultimate care and connection.
yeah,
That's what you're providing.
yeah.
Yeah.
While it might still feel uncomfortable for that person, I think it feels like a hug.
Yes. Yes, it does. It does.
And everybody wants to. Most people do want to demonstrate that. And
Yeah.
so I think offering a way to do that or giving very specific ways to do that.
Yep. And two, it's what are your gifts? I had some friends who they just gave me a whole bunch of gift cards so that if I didn't feel like cooking dinner,
Mhm.
we could go get something. It was
Yeah.
like the most beautiful thing. I know someone else just brought groceries over.
Mhm.
Simple,
Yeah.
but I didn't have to think about it. Like it showing support can be in the most simplest ways. Like I had one friend, she brought over a little fir tree, like a miniature
Mhm.
tree that I planted in my backyard.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now I see that. I'm like, "Oh, that's Ian's tree. Look at it grow." It was just as it was simple things that
Mhm.
stuck out that really may not have seemed big to those giving,
Mhm.
but really made a difference to me who was grieving.
Exactly. I love that. And so the caveat I want to put on that too is you can do that and then put it on repeat.
Yeah.
So if you're somebody who easily will grab a friend a coffee to show you care, pick that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do it and then do it again.
Yeah.
And then maybe just set a reminder on your
Yep.
phone once a month. n- Do that
Yep.
and show up with a coffee and share some memory that you have about the person that passed,
Yeah.
or introduce their name in some way, even
Yeah.
if you maybe didn't know them.
Yeah. Every grieving mom wants to talk about their child,
Yeah.
no matter how they died, no matter how they died.
So, what do you think has been harder for you or more challenging when it comes to mind, body, or soul through this grieving process?
The body has definitely been harder for me to master. So, my mind and my soul in general, I caught on to that right away. Very easy to work on that and be in tune with that. But it was my body. So, I go back to when Ian died on a Monday.
Mhm.
By Thursday, I had this channeled message from him, quantum shifted my grief. So my mind, my soul was not stuck in that grief. But it
Mhm.
was like 6, 8 weeks later. I remember just sitting in the morning, sitting in a chair, like, why is my body so sore?
Mhm.
Why is my body aching? Like I
Mhm.
hurt all over. And it was made very clear to me, in my spiritual realm, my body was holding on to grief, and I got
Mhm.
in a meditation, I got this message from my body, like my womb was speaking to me. I carried this boy for
Mhm.
9 months. I nourished him.
Mhm.
I fed him, and my body was telling me, "I grieve him. I
Mhm.
grieve this loss, this connection that's no longer on the earth."
Mhm.
I ended up writing myself meditations to
Mhm.
w- help my body release what it was holding on
Mhm.
to this grief and the pain. It was called Being with the Aches and the Pains. And I had to sit with, where do I hurt today? And I just had to simply be and acknowledge it. And again, it's the same thing with releasing these emotions that our body's holding. Once I just sat and acknowledged it and was with it, accepted it, oh, that's what this is.
Mhm.
God, within a couple of days, oh, I'm not so sore anymore. Did it a couple more times, and whoo. So there have been a number of times in the past couple of years that my body has become achy, and I know it's the grief because it's layers. So even though my mind, my soul may not be in the throes of grief, my body is slower to process.
Mhm.
And I need to give it the grace and the compassion and allow it and help it release.
Okay, I think that was a beautiful example to help the understanding of the three types here of mind, body, and soul. And there is a different experience with each.
Mhm.
Every, especially when it comes to grief, it is layered. And so to be able to approach it from that angle, it's not common,
Right. Yeah.
but it's incredibly helpful.
Yeah. And in the work that I do, like this mind, body, soul mastery, like this whole reason for this podcast is because what I've learned in the work that I do with my clients is that when we can get the mind and the body and soul working together in partnership,
Mm.
your healing's going to accelerate. Things are going to move faster. Downloads are going to come faster. Where you're moving to this next version of you, you're going to get there faster when you get the three working together in partnership and one's not off on its own or the resistance isn't taking over.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm slow to the starting line. Like I have to sit in a lot of pain to sit in the aches and the pains for a while before I catch on. Oh, that's what
There
it
it is.
is.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
But I do eventually get there.
Yes. And maybe that then is a good illustration of that. While your story shows how you can move through things in a different way, there might still be a part that isn't doing the same thing, that isn't processing in the
Yeah.
same way
Yeah.
and might need some more attention. And that's okay.
Yes. And that's part of healing. Like,
Mhm.
I so wish that with body code, I so wish that I could go through every organ, every tissue, every and just release and clear it all. And I'd be done. Like,
Right.
I'd be like, I've tried it. Trust me, I've tried it. It
Yeah.
doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way because sometimes you have to work on this trauma or this emotion or this issue
Mhm.
before you can get to the next thing. And so
Mhm.
it's layers
Yeah.
and it comes up at different times and it's just acknowledging what's coming up, accepting, okay, this is where I'm at and okay, what can I do to support my body, my mind, body, soul? Because there's all things that we can do to support all three. What do I need to support myself to move through where I'm at right now?
Yeah. I think your experience and what you have mastered lends itself tremendously to healing when it comes to grief. So, my hope with this is that just through the conversation that's happened, but if anybody is moved or stirred, that they act
Yeah.
and reach out for the support from you because you're uniquely made to do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And as I said, like my heart breaks for those who are just really stuck in.
Mhm.
And I think there'd be one thing if I could say to any of those who are listening is pay attention to your words. So if you're saying, I'm never going to get over this, you're never going to get over it.
Mhm.
If you're just saying, I can't do this anymore, you won't.
Mhm.
And so pay attention to your words because your words are going to tell you where you're at.
Mhm.
And if your words are the things that are holding you back, those are the things that you can easily with intention. It's hard work. I shouldn't say easy, but with intention,
Mhm.
you can begin to change those words and create an openness within you that allows you to maybe seek something different or maybe choose something different or maybe even it's just I'm going to go outside today.
Yeah.
And
Beautiful.
a, that's a beautiful step.
It is. Yeah. Well, Brenda, is there anything else that you feel like you want to make sure you share or are called to contribute?
Mm. I think the only thing I want to add is wherever you are, own it. And then also find the way within you, whether it's through the hope
Mhm.
or just simply grace and compassion, acknowledging where I'm at and the grace and the compassion and loving yourself where you are
Mhm.
is some of the best things that you can do right now for yourself that will help you move forward.
Beautiful. Thank you for giving me the chance to
Thank you.
share your story.
Thank you.
And I think that's it.
That's it. That's a wrap. So
Yeah.
thank you for listening and joining the Mind, Body, Soul Mastery podcast today.
Thank you for being part of today's journey. I hope our time together brought you moments of insight, heightened awareness, and a spark of empowerment. If this episode resonated with you, I encourage you to share it with a friend. You can connect with me or today's guest through the show notes. I'm always here to offer support to guide you deeper on your path. Remember, Mind, Body, Soul Mastery is a continuous journey of growth. Be gentle with yourself as your awareness deepens. Grace and compassion will guide you forward. Until next time, I'm Brenda Staat-Tomlinson, here to guide you as you embrace your journey of mind, body, soul mastery.